Hey y'all, what's up? So, I want to give a shout out to Twitter because without Twitter, I would not have had an opportunity to talk to Ujijji Davis. And a second shout out to Transforming Cities because they really introduced me to Ujijji. Um, she is my first victim, my very first episode podcast interview. We talked about growing up and our names, and we did a little deeper dive into why we went into this profession. Okay, I hope you like it. Very first episode. Here we go.
Good morning.
Good morning. Look at you making money moves.
I'm trying. We gotta take off the world, so you gotta start somewhere, right?
Gotta start somewhere.
How did we meet?
Online?
Yes. You won.
Yes, right? $1 million question. No, yeah, we met on Twitter.
Yeah. And it was something you posted. I think someone retweeted something, and then or I was following someone else. I can't remember. And then I was like, I never met a Black landscape architect before. And then you're like, well, let me introduce myself, you know.
That's very Brooklyn of me. That's hilarious. Yeah, no, we met on Twitter. And yeah, I think you sent me, like, you commented on something. And then from there, it's been like great synergy. Just like, oh, who can I at? Number one. Right. So that's really cool. That's really cool. Well, I'm really glad that we have that platform to connect. There seems to be like a really like diverse group of designers, everybody who have their, strong 140 characters that they put on online. And I think it's a really great tool for how we exchange information and connect with other people. So I'm happy for it.
And I met so many people through Twitter that I've never met live in 3D. Right. Yeah. So I was listening to the Transforming Cities podcast, which you, as well as Transforming Cities, blasted. And I listened to that podcast like 2-3 times. Because it was just, because there was so much information. Like, I feel like I know you, like me and you. Like, I was like, I need to talk to her. We need to be besties. Like, okay, first of all, your name. Okay, so what's the story behind your name? Is there a story behind your name?
There's always a story. Yeah. So my name is Ujijji Davis. My birthday is in March, but after my parents had me, I didn't have a name for a while. It changes between when I ask them. One parent says it was a couple weeks, one parent says it was a couple months. So it was a while. And so I left the hospital as baby girl Martin, and my parents they couldn't figure out what they wanted to name me. I had a lot of runner-ups, which were very different from each other. One was like Ono, like Yoko Ono. One was Zaza, like Zaza Gabor. One was Hyacinth, like the flower. Very different, just all very different. But my parents were watching an episode of Jeopardy one evening, and my name was the answer to a clue. So they liked the way it sounded. It's a place in Tanzania where two explorers met and then disappeared. And no one got it right on Jeopardy. And Alex Trebek was like, "Oh, so sorry." and then so they heard the name and they went to the library and looked it up, because that's what you did back in the day. You looked through books and, like very specific internet searches. And so they found Ujiji as a place in Tanzania. It means like little city. It's a Swahili word. And they were like, oh, this is cute. So they went back wherever you got to go downtown, back to the hospital. I don't know, and registered me, and that's my name now. So
Do you have a middle name?
I do not,
Okay.
or I do, but I don't want to share it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Does it have the
It was
same significance? Like, is there a
no,
no
it
back?
wasn't
Okay.
the same thing. It's just yeah,
You
it's
don't have
fine.
to.
I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I love no. I love my name. It's just always a joke. So my middle name is DeCeCe. So I was it's just joke with my parents because they were into rhyming, like oh no, Zaza. So like Ujiji just couldn't stand alone. So I just was like, I'll chalk it up to the early '90s. Everybody was,
Yeah, Black
coming up
Power,
with their
right?
own, yeah, their own names.
Afrocentric, yeah.
Right. But my middle name is actually Italian, which so Assisi is a place in Italy. And when you add the D in front of it, it means to be from Assisi. So the relationship is both my parents grew up in kind of like different degrees of religious households. And Saint Francis was the saint that it was the saint who looks over children and animals. And so that was the person that they wanted to protect me moving forward. It just so happens that now my first and my middle name rhyme completely. And it's never a topic of discussion for me with other people because I never really have the time to go into having a Swahili first name, an Italian middle name, and then one is like super like has a really strong Christian connotation, and the other one is like a strong back to Africa
Yeah,
relationship.
right, right.
So I just, Ujiji is interesting enough for me. So, do you have a story with your name?
No, absolutely not. Melissa. My mom was she was watching The Love Boat or something with a boat, and the boat's name was Melissa.
Oh, that's
She
cute.
just liked Melissa. And my middle name though, my middle name is Raquel, but it's spelled
Mm-hmm.
Rachel. And
Oh, good.
she loved the actress Raquel Welch. So that's
Okay.
the word. That's my that's where it came
Oh,
from.
so you're a TV baby.
I am a TV baby, but some way
Yeah.
somehow in the hospital, Rachel got put on there. So,
Oh, I see. Yeah.
um, you know,
But they don't pronounce it like that.
I don't. I guess I don't know. No, my boring Melissa R. Daniel. So your family, though, your mother's Jamaican and your
Mm-hmm.
dad is American, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what
Yes,
part of
I am.
Jamaica is your mom from?
So my mom was born in St. Mary, which is on the northern side of the island, not too far from Ocho Rios. Um, but it's very much in the country. Um, my mom was born in well, with all these what other people call, but she was born in Stewart Mountain, which is actually a valley, and that's where my grandmother lived, and that's where she grew up and went to school. And her father, my grandfather, lived in Martintown, which is named after him or named after his family. Very like commonly, he had a lot of children and was also one of the larger landowners in that area. So, yeah. So my mom is from the countryside, but probably, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful places in the world. And then she came to the States when she was about 14, to where my grandmother had come ahead of her.
So she went to school here when she was 14, right?
Yep, she started high school. Yeah.
Right. And is she
Mm-hmm.
the only child that came up, or did everybody follow suit?
Uh, that's a good question. So I think she's one of the only children, honestly, in our family that came and stayed. There's a lot of people, especially on her own dad's side. A lot of people came maybe for a little while, but then went back. And most of her siblings still live in Jamaica now, or across different other islands of the Caribbean, depending on what they do for work. But it's only a very small handful of her family that stayed in the States. So, yeah, most of everybody is still back home.
Have you been?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I think the first time I went, I was 7. And then probably went with my mom every few years. And then once I actually got to college and I had a little bit more flexibility, I was going back every year or every other year. I haven't been back in a little while. The last time I was there was for my grandfather's funeral, but I'm overdue. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So when you grew up in Brooklyn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was I'm trying to remember from the last from that previous podcast that you grew up in a diverse neighborhood, right?
Yes,
Yeah. So
I did.
there were other Caribbean folks around, and there
Oh,
were
yes.
okay.
Yes, I was
So
never hungry. Yes.
so like growing up, like in school and stuff, like kids are mean, right? So did they tease you with your names, or was it
Oh,
like
of course. Of
was
course.
was
My name, I had locks growing up, and so people would call me a boy, and that was offensive to me at that point in time.
well, yeah, because
Uh,
you're like I'm a girl, yeah,
I'm a girl. I'd wear a full on dress, and people would be like, young man.
right.
um, yeah, people would tease me about my name, but, or, if I had people who spoke Spanish in my neighborhood, they would talk about you in Spanish, whatever. But um, that was life. That wasn't something that like got me down because I wasn't the only person who was getting teased for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like everybody turn around and point a finger at so and so. Like that was maybe like a good 3 minutes out of the day, and then we're going to direct our attention to this other person who has like I don't know. There were lots of other kids who had parents who named their kids very like much like back to African names that a lot of other kids were just not, uh, you know, into or understood the significance and things like that. So I went to school with Asadas. I went to school with Sudanis. I went to school with a girl named Tanzania. So like it was, everybody got their 3 minutes of someone, wanting to laugh and make fun of the African culture that their parents bestowed upon them. But it wasn't something that bogged me down or made me want to change something about myself. I actually probably didn't even start going by a nickname until I got to college, to be honest. So it's not like I growing up, I never tried to shorten my name.
Mm-hmm.
There was never an abbreviated version of my name that made more sense to me.
Right.
It really wasn't until I got to college where it was the cool thing to give people nicknames and blah blah blah. But even in high school, I was who I was. So
I know for me growing up, so I grew up in DC, and it was like just chocolate city. So it was I was never um in terms of race wise, like it was just black
mm-hmm.
folks. But since my mom, both my mom and dad are Trinidadian, and so growing up, I was always surrounded, with if not Trinidadians, then other Caribbean folk. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was in elementary school, I had an accent. So I remember a teacher would try to correct. I used to say tree, and she's like, "No, it's 3." And it was like it was so embarrassing. I remember I was so embarrassed, and kids couldn't understand what I was saying, and then they were like, "Well, where you from?" But I was like Trinidad, and they was. So then I had to
Mm-hmm.
like switch. No, I'm Jamaican because everybody knew what Jamaican was. So
Interesting.
it was kind of like a denial early on
Mm-hmm.
about like where I was from,
Mm.
and so then I had to like quickly assimilate and become the DC American Black girl.
Mm.
So that didn't really affect me until I hit college, because then it was like
Right.
I was surrounded by all these international folks, and so they're like, I'm like, well, I'm international too. So then I started, you know, reclaiming
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Oh wait, I just want to end on that point. That's very interesting. That and that you feel like you had to do that. I think uh, just like to just be under the cover of an identity that is more popular or more accepted before you can like as your way, kind of as a gateway to being within a community. I think that's very interesting. I don't necessarily think that I ever had to do that. I think for me, I couldn't run away from it. There's no, even if I went by Gigi as a little girl, it still would have been with J's, and there would have been an extra amount of them for someone to be like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's very interesting that for you to, you know, I won't even say seek another identity, but to protect yours, you know, to kind of fly in the cover of something else to protect what was important to you, about your heritage and who you are. I think that's really incredible.
Well, it was more. I mean, it was more to it than that. It wasn't just my heritage. It was more also like where I grew up, because I grew up in the projects. And it was the time where kids will make fun of that. Like, oh, you live with
Mm-hmm.
roaches and rats, which was true at the time. But it was really hurtful. So I didn't really have sleepovers because I was too
Mm.
embarrassed. And like the good friends that I did have at the time didn't even see that. And
Mm-hmm.
as you get older and you start thinking about it, it was like, wow, this friend never made fun of where I live. Like you
Mm-hmm.
think back of all that stuff. So it wasn't as that I was hiding. And it's weird because now as an adult, it manifests itself. Like for
Mm-hmm.
me, that was the reason why I got into architecture. It was because
Mm.
I felt that no child should live in those conditions. No child should
Right.
live in public, to be embarrassed about public housing
Right.
and to be embarrassed about being poor. So I
Right.
thought that, hey, I'm going to be an architect to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then come to find out, it's all a lie. It's like it's more is deeper than what it really. I just thought that, hey, if I design a building and it has all these, make it design it all
Mm-hmm.
nice and pretty and stuff, then yeah, people will be happy. But it's the maintenance factor, it's the resource factor, it's
Mm-hmm.
the the teaching of, systematic poverty that architects don't deal with at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really why I got into it. And in
Mm-hmm.
going back to like college, and living in Chocolate City, like I went to my college was difficult for me,
Mm.
because I was so used to being a majority. So the first college
Mm-hmm.
I went to, it's basically like a white dot surrounded in a black space. So as soon as you enter the university boundaries, it's like night and day.
Mm.
And they, I was, I got challenged a lot, and I challenged in a way of, I remember I was in like a philosophy class, and some way, somehow, the topic of affirmative action came about. And then all
Mm.
these kids were like, hey, yeah, like my friend didn't get into college because of affirmative action. And I don't understand. Like, we work just as hard. Like, why are they giving you guys, like, and I was the only Black student in class. And so it was just like,
Mm.
everyone was just ganging up on me. And I didn't have the tools to defend myself, because why? Like, I was the majority for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about these things in school, but I never experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when you went to school, did you have anything similar, or like I remember you
Oh,
mentioned that
yes.
you switched majors at one point. Was it because of that, or?
Um, no. So I switched majors because was switching interests, but that did not protect me or absolve me in any way of interacting with uh, uh, young white students who were in the similar mindset, right? Who were in mindsets that somehow I was there on an affirmative action scholarship, um, that and then and then I guess there's those kind of components that help to fill in their story, right? So when I had transferred into the landscape architecture program, for me I was starting from scratch. So it's not like I had like this incredible artistic or computer ability at that point in time. um, and so for someone to say, oh well, she must be here because of X, Y, and Z, because it's clearly not based on her skill set. That might have been true at that point in time. It wasn't true. I got into the school because I'm incredibly smart
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
worked really hard to do so. Um, I had an interaction with a student around printing, which was very interesting. And I honestly, I won't ever forget it because the way that she asked me, the way that she interacted with me is something that I always feel is in the back of my mind. And we were printing for, a mid review kind of crit. And had gotten to the studio early to plot, and there was some issue happening with the plotter. No one could, it was the ink or the paper, but IT had been called and they were on their way. And because I was ahead of schedule, it probably didn't need to be printed until like another 2 hours. But I knew I had to finish something else. And then I was happy I'd gotten there early because the printer was down. And maybe within 20 minutes of me working with IT to troubleshoot what the issue was, my partner on this group project comes into the room and she's like already fuming, and she's upset with me because the print is not ready, and she more or less charges at me at the computer, and starts yelling at me. Why isn't it up? Why isn't the plot up? I've been working all night. Why isn't it up? And I said, I know, right? Crazy.
Right.
um, and I said to her, I was like, well, IT is working on the plotter. Like it's nothing to do with anyone's file or computer, which thankfully I said, we're just trying to make sure that something is going, that whatever the issue is, we can resolve it. And and so her energy is still directed at me. And then what she says is, I don't even know why you're here. And I knew this, like, and I said, excuse me. And she was like, I don't even know why you're here. You're not good at design. You're not good at this computer stuff. I don't even know why you're here. Um, and I didn't have an answer for her. My answer was honestly like to get up and maybe like punch her, but like that's not how you can resolve your issues, right? But I felt small in that moment. I felt really small. And also the fact that nobody else, while we're having this interaction, is defending me
Or
or
saying
asking
anything.
her to calm down, made me feel like other people felt that way about me being there as well. That they also didn't know why I was there, that I was in some ways very useless. In some ways, almost maybe even decorative, like I'm just there to be there. Um, and I felt incredibly small about what my contributions were or had been or could be. And I still had like another year and a half, and I was just very confused. And so I couldn't respond to her. I really couldn't. And I think to your point, like I'm used to being, growing up in high school and in middle school, I was used to being around people who accepted you a little bit more easily. Maybe they didn't like your sneakers, but they didn't, it's not like they, wrote you off as an entire person. No one
Mm-hmm.
questioned you being at the school, um, for any reason to say that you're any less smart or, or capable. And so that was really, it wasn't necessarily the first time that I had that interaction, but that was the one that was the most memorable because I felt that I was in a position to serve my team. And I was really working to ensure that my team would be the most prepared for what we had going on. And that interaction revealed a lot to me on how possibly people felt about me being in the department. And I don't know if it necessarily inspired me to be better or to learn more or to be more receiving of information and critiques. But I do recognize that in any type of moment of vulnerability, I hear that in my mind, and it requires me to have an answer because I never want anyone to question my place or my existence again in that way. And so if I ever felt that someone was talking to me and there is a "why are you here" coming on, I need to know what it is that I'm trying to accomplish by me being in this role or me being in this position, and stay true to that and feel affirmed by that I actually know what I'm doing here. So it was being put on the spot in a really uncomfortable way, in a way that challenged me, that made me feel different. It made me feel very aware of who I was and where I had come from, and the gap that I still needed to jump to stay ahead, I guess. But it was a really great life lesson that I keep with me now. So.
Managing an architecture project in an architecture firm has lots of moving parts. After experimenting with several different programs, I realized that I needed a software that is customizable for multiple tasks. The more I talked to other firm owners, the more I realized there was a void where my firm wasn't big enough for programs like Asana, Instagram, or Trello, and not so big to spend $10,000 up front for some integrated software. I wanted a software that could do dashboard and Kanban views, Gantt charts, serve as an intranet for the company, and resource loading. Then I discovered Smartsheets for Architects. Interested in how Smartsheets for Architects helped me? Go to www.smartsheet4architects.com and enter in ArchisPoly in the promo code to receive 10% off the course. Save yourself hours of guesswork from dealing with conflicted spreadsheets.
Do you think it's a scar on your somewhere? I wouldn't say soul, but it's
No, my soul.
I wouldn't go that deep, but it's
right. I mean, I don't know if I would call it a scar. I think that there are interactions that we have with people, especially with our white counterparts, that we carry. And I think we can choose to carry it as a scar, or we can choose to carry it as a lesson. And as competitive as architecture is, and as very not diverse as it is, while I don't think, I don't think that everyone is out to get you, I do think, but I also think that there are people who are really not equipped to have certain conversations. And it's usually in those moments where people are in their own way failing, that they're still teaching you a lesson. And for me, my first reaction was to feel upset and to feel defeated. And but I knew that I loved what I was doing. At that point, I didn't think I was supposed to be really good at it. That's why I'm in school. Right. I'm learning how to be good at it. I don't think I'm supposed to leave and be, the $1 million baby coming out of this program. I'm on my way there. But I think that interaction just helped to put things in perspective for me. And I think it even helped to steer what is my purpose in landscape architecture? What is it that I want to do? Why am I here? Why am I in the field? What is it that, as a person, that I feel like I can and really want to contribute? So I wouldn't call it a scar, because I've definitely had drinks with this this person afterward, and it's been fine, and they're doing well, I'm doing well. And so it's not necessarily dust under the rug, but it is a life lesson that I think kind of helped steer my boat a little bit more, and also understand some of the real parameters of walking into rooms or walking into conferences or sessions or wherever where there that one person might still be there, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's the tricky part, right? Like to navigate in those spaces, like to, and it's I wouldn't say it's a trigger for me, but it's now that I'm older, now that I'm more comfortable in who I am and
Mm-hmm.
where I want to go, and I shouldn't say where I want to go. I'm still confused on that, but confident in my abilities, I should say.
Right.
Um, I'm beginning to avoid certain spaces
Mm.
because I walk into a room and I'm the only Black woman in that room,
Mm.
or I'm the only woman in this room.
Right.
It I I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to. I feel like I have to be another person.
Mm.
That my language, my whether it's verbal or body,
Mm-hmm.
needs to change. I need
Mm-hmm.
to talk about the weather, and I need to
Mm-hmm.
talk about, like whatever generic conversation that, I trained myself to have to avoid certain things. I remember I was at this vendors like gathering, and I'm trying, is it a vendor? No, I was at like a real estate property developer thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um I was I had a drink in my hand, and this white guy come next to me and start talking about Obama. Like
Mm.
just randomly just starts talking about Obama in a negative sense. And I'm like, I had nothing to say. Like I
Yeah.
had nothing to say. I'm like, yeah,
Right.
like, yeah, I mean, okay. I mean, what do I do? And it
Mm-hmm.
happened all throughout his presidency that random white folks would just white men will come and just start having make this outlandish comment, and it was kind of like to get my reaction or to, and I'm like, I'm not here for this. I'm here to look at this workstation. I'm here to look at this,
Mm-hmm.
you know this chair. Like it's
You're
not,
right.
I don't understand where this is coming from. Like it, and because of this I'm reacting differently to to I don't want to be in that space. Like I just
Right.
I'm beginning to avoid it.
Right.
And even in committees, like I don't want to be on this committee if I'm the only person on here. Then why am I here?
Right.
Am I a token to
Mm-hmm.
to show? Like why am I here? How can I contribute to this conversation if none of you can relate to any of my experiences?
Right.
And it I feel like now it's a bad thing because it's a way of me protecting myself,
Mm-hmm.
but then also it's like I may be preventing um a better outcome in whatever project that they're doing,
Right.
or and I don't believe in educating folks. Like I have a whole bunch of like older mentors. I remember one older gentleman told me that you need to educate your colleagues about these things. You need to show up so that they know that this is wrong. This is wrong behavior, or this is like whatever. And I was just like, no, that's not my job. I'm not their parent. Like, why would I do that? And then I
Mm-hmm.
also realized too that you may be that the good Black woman, but then everybody else is bad. Do you understand what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're not in that category because I know you type
Mm-hmm.
thing. So it's just I'm I'm exhausted by it, and I think the reason why I even started this podcast is because um, I can't really have. I've never heard any of these conversations
Mm-hmm.
before with
Right.
other designers, with other things. And one more thing I know it's like a half hour. I don't. I want to be like aware of your time.
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Um, but I want to talk about why we got into this field in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned before, I wanted to help people, right? I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to specifically low income or even affordability of housing, and how it really it's to me it's kind of like diabetes in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like it's a slow, it's generational. Like the
Mm-hmm.
scar carries through generations, that type of thing, you know. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a hereditary disease that really, and you have to be strong enough for the next generation to A, recognize there's something wrong, and B, to actually get out of it. I know for me, my own personal experience is, if it wasn't for my mom's determination of, hey, I need to get this house for my kids, and for my
Mm-hmm.
older sister to say, hey, my mom can't do this alone. We need to be basically a, a, a two income parental type household in order
Mm-hmm.
for us to get out of that cycle. And it wasn't even a cycle, because my dad came up here first, and he came
Mm-hmm.
up here on like an apprenticeship thing. And at the time, they, you know, they gave him the paperwork and stuff, but he still had to find housing and stuff. And he had a wife and a daughter back in Trinidad, which was my mom and
Mm-hmm.
sister. And
Mm-hmm.
so he the housing that he found was in a low income community, but at the time that community was thriving. So this was
Mm-hmm.
like the six six no 70s. It was 70s, mid 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And um there's this area called Northwest One at the time, and prior to that, it was like slums. It was like where all the um, black folks who worked in like um, did cleaning or did like any, you know, any
Mm-hmm.
type of white like type work. They lived in these areas. And so DC was like, okay, we're going to do this urban renewal, air quotes. And Northwest One was part of that urban renewal. So it was like this big thing. They got like architects and urban planners, and they had this whole like site design. It was a beautiful thing. Like it was, and the developers were Christian organizations. So the housing project that I grew up in, the developer was a black church. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just it was meant for black people helping black people, and it
Mm-hmm.
was meant to, like, you know, to give homes to low income families. So when my dad got this place, it was, you know, it was thriving. It was, you know, and then crack happened, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, it just became the project. So me understanding that history now, because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know it 2 years ago. I didn't know about this, and then I started questioning, why did I become an architect? Why did I
Mm-hmm.
decide to do this? And then I realized it was, you know, to help low income folks. And so I was like, well, let me just look into my past,
Mm-hmm.
my property past, and see how it all transformed. And so, I mean, part of the podcast too is me going down this road. So it's like twofold. So there's an interview portion, and then there's me discovering where I came from growing up,
Mm-hmm.
and where the hell am I going.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, that's my story. I know that you shared a similar story with me, not in the, I mean, in terms of, you went into what you're doing now to help people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. For what? Let's see. What's my backstory? Um, so I guess for me, one of my the things that I enjoyed to do the most was going to the park with my parents. Um, and I think lucky for where they both lived by parks. And so it was always just kind of like a cool, kind of free, it was always a playground available for me to be at. And I think as I got older, I recognized that there's a gap age of amenities that are for people, which is like teens, um, 12 and I guess 12 to 18. And that means that in most parks in most cities, if you are not under the age of 12, um, but or if you're over the age of 12 and you're not with a child, you can't be in a playground. And so there's a big gap in what young people can do after school. If they're not in an after school program, if they don't have a job, which, different things are changing,
Mm-hmm.
which probably would limit younger people from being employed until they're 18. There's just a gap in resources. So even if you could live across the street from a playground, but someone could potentially enforce you not being there if you're like 14, just looking for a place to hang out with you and your friends. Um, Also, like those ages don't mix well, right? Because that age group is interested in doing something a lot more active or a little bit more, um, we'll say risque, I guess, of all things, than, 8 and 9 year olds. And so you then have like a mismatch in what's interesting to those groups. And, and then you jump into being an adult with people who run with their dogs and and it's
Mm-hmm. Right.
so I always felt like there was a gap with how young people were served. And then having been a young person myself, um, feeling like I am uh, I am putting myself in a situation to either be unsafe or be in a situation where I am doing something illegal simply by being in a park at a certain age at a certain time. Um, it's if I'm just walking through, Central Park by myself at 7:30 at night, or I'm with my friends, I'm more likely to be surveyed than someone who is, again, like walking their dog or they have a stroller or something like that.
Right.
And so just kind of understanding what those different dynamics were, feeling like our youth were strongly underserved. And I don't know if that's law, if that's design, if that's just kind of social culture of this group of where humans just become unruly for these like 6-7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and no one wants to deal with them. So I do know that there's that aspect of it in really trying to understand what does it mean to really um, serve our people. Um, and then I think secondary to that was some of the environmental kind of components. Um, Most of my friends growing up all had asthma. And I knew that was because, or we knew because the air was not good. And of course, being close to a park helps to alleviate some of those ailments. But again, I guess I could circle back. I don't know if that's design, it's policy. I don't know if that's resources. But I chose design. And I chose design as being the way that I would want to address those problems of improving environmental impacts and resilience, and also creating spaces for people who are often alienated or omitted from space. Um, and there's probably a myriad of ways on how that could be tackled, but I grew up as a creative person, and being able to kind of understand the role that design plays in responding to those issues became really interesting to me once I hit college. And so that, I think, is one of the things that really got me into landscape architecture as a profession, because I felt that it could help solve those two problems that I felt were important and critical to me. So,
I never thought of that. I never divided it up in those segments, because I guess it's because I never knew about it, right? Like how you have design, you have policy, you have, I never thought about it. I've always thought about it as, okay, let's solve this problem. Well, what's the quickest way to solve this problem? Is it through? No, it's not that. It's I that's wow. Okay.
yeah.
You just
Well,
opened
you
something
got to
for
play.
me. You really did. You just did. You're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Wow. Okay.
Well, design, I feel like design is playing the long game, it really is. Like, from the time imagine a structure and then build it and then it's occupied, for it to actually have the impacts that you want, that's like a good 10 years, you know? And the same way with landscape and landscape architecture. I could put a tree in the ground. It's not really going to be a grown tree until 15 years from now.
Yeah.
And that's when we actually get the impact and the different relationships and ecosystems and all that other stuff that come with that. That's when it actually happens. So, design is really about playing the long game and being conscious of that too. Like you have to know that what you do in the year 2000, probably now in 2020,
only now
is when you can like go back and document and be like, see, this actually changed something. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with planting the right, seeds that help to provoke a certain type of change. Once the formula is right, I'm okay with that, because I think, when you do stuff immediately, you can easily be short-sighted. You can just be thinking about the problem as it is and not the actual system, And so, for the tree that I put down in the ground and I have to wait 20 years for it to grow, I can also, there's also other people at work. There's other industries at work that are helping that grow, both directly and indirectly, whether it's pushing back against Trump and all his rollbacks on environmental protection. Like, that's like, we're really concerned about that over here, And so, and that's one critical, how we think about it from a policy and law perspective is really important. But we won't know what the effects are unless we can kind of establish some type of, if it's proof of concept, or to really show why it's important, because we have these measurable effects, and that's where design comes in. And so we play the long game in making a better place. But like I said, I'm okay with that, because if it takes a generation for something to actually be impactful, then I know that that generation is actually going to be able to thrive, and live off of the fruit of our hard work,
Yeah, right? Yeah. But I mean, when nowadays, with the materials that architects use to build, I feel like buildings aren't meant to last for 30 years. Even the builders, right, with the townhomes, for example, those type of properties, like, I feel that it's like paper. Like, your walls are paper, literally. Like it's, it's durable. It has this special, like, whatever coating, or like whatever chemical compound to make it more durable, because you can make it thinner. It's still thin. Your house will still move because the wind is blowing. So I feel like these things aren't meant to last. And I like the idea of, so, like, going back to this whole Northwest One thing, when they first did it, they made these like covenants, right? These deeds, and it guaranteed that this area would be for low income housing. So me as an adult now, that deed restriction has now expired. So it was just a waiting game for these developers, and now they're like, yes, we got some property. And so it's like they had this plan, right? And now that, maybe, because of drugs, because of institutional racism, because of all these factors, that the low income area did not succeed. Now the new thing is mixed use, to have mixed incomes, to meet and mingle. That way you don't have, you know, this concentration of poverty. So it's always good in the beginning, and it depends on who's supporting it ultimately, because back in the day they fought. It was this huge fight in this area between the people that they vacated to build these low income people housing, and the capital planning people, because they also wanted to do some other things, and like there was like literally protest, and and I'm sitting here reading all this, and I'm like, wow, like I had no idea. There's no semblance of this, right? There's no semblance of like, Martin Luther King stood here, like, not, he didn't. I have no proof of that, but it's just like there's no, like, there was a protest here, like, and people camped out, and it was, there's just nothing there, like, right, and now like half the area is gone, like they bulldozed like a certain, like this corner of the area. Where I grew up itself is still there, but the other area is just slowly disappearing, and even the name in itself had meaning, like the name of the area that they called it had meaning, and to have these like both Catholic folks to really interject into this community because they believe that they can help these low income folks. Like the energy, the synergy was all there, but what happened? And the memory of that is completely gone. Now it's this new thing now, right? And it's just like, now it's this cookie cutter thing, right? It's like, okay, we're going to have this, 12-story apartment building, and it's going to have all these cool amenities, and, and that's it. And then we're going to have these mixed use. So what we're going to do is, some people, the majority of people are going to pay $2,500, and then 4 people is going to be low income. It's and we dedicated these units here for them, and we're going to put in the cheapest, shittiest appliances and cabinetry and all that stuff just for them. And it's going to be at the worst location. It's going to be right next to the subway station, where in an alley, and it's it's
Right.
I mean, so I see, yeah, like I want to be able to do that, but I feel like I also need to be a mayor. Like I need to get these policies in there, and even still, like the next term will be over. I don't get reelected, and then the other guy comes in, and he's like, "No, we're gonna no income. We're just gonna have market rate for everybody. You get a market rate. You get a market rate."
I think that, I mean, you hit on an important part. It's about people's priorities. A lot of people are not interested in the kind of the greater good model of when you put something of quality that it'll last, and when you make it accessible to more people, more likely people will stay, and you don't have the whole transient issue of a transient tenant who's just kind of bopping around, until something happens. And so I think, I don't know who leads that, if it's from a design perspective of like building, this idea of building to last, and and not building in the temporary. That yes, let's be solutions oriented. Let's respond to the issues of today that may also persist tomorrow. But let's also not. It's not about being temporal. It's not a 5-year fix. And so I think that's an interesting perspective. I think that I think to your point of running for mayor, I think architects probably have to get more political, to be honest, and have to begin to understand what the connections are between what it is that they do and propose and what the law says, and not purely from a licensing standpoint or building code or anything like that, but what do the social trends that people in politics are trying to respond to, and where is design actually the answer, versus more policy or more rules or more penalties. Because I think that in itself is a gap. There are very few people in office that have design backgrounds, unless they're in in a planning position. But I can't really think of a mayor who is also an architect, who is also an urban planner, who, can think about these issues critically and pass, major reform with that in mind. And is that the role of a mayor, or is the mayor, I don't know. What is a mayor supposed to do?
Right.
Is it make money for the city? Is it, establish a certain kind of status quo for how operations happen in the city? I'm not sure. But I think to your point, it would be really great to kind of see of a strong transition of architects moving into policy and moving into reform, and into politics, to really lead charges that, to your point about this community, it was planned well, it was planned independently, it probably got a lot of public support to do what it's doing. And because of the shift of, if it is the market, shift of trends, shift of issues, whatever the case, it's now very largely something different that is only responsive to a micro version of a larger issue. It's not tackling anything that's generational. It's not tackling anything that's systematic. It's not linked to any kind of program. It's a development that checks a box, that doesn't actually perform at its true capacity of what it could do, because we already have the precedent of what it did for a generation before, Right. So I think that's an interesting point. So are you going to run for mayor?
No, absolutely not.
Couldn't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't hurt, but no. They'll dig into my past, find this podcast, and then I'm ruined for life.
She told everyone she was Jamaican.
Exactly.
It's a no-go.
Bumba clot, Speaking of, so I know, like, when I go back to Trinidad, even when I went to, a friend of mine got married in Montego Bay, and we stayed at the resort, and I spent way too much money on this excursion, right? And it was like horseback riding up somewhere, and then the horses run along the beach, like it was. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's so cool, And so as I was, with other people, of course, in a line with all these horses, the guides were just talking about plants, right? Like this is this plant, it does this, that's that plant, does that. Even when I go to Trinidad, right? Like, my husband's Trinidadian, like everybody's Trinidadian. So, except for me. So when I go back, either my mom or my husband or some relative or whatever, they'll like, hey, this plant is this, that is mango tree, that's a coconut tree, this is this and that. And it just amazed me at how everybody knew what plants were. Like I go outside, I look outside, that's grass and that's a tree. That's my education right there. So I don't know, like when you did that help you out at all when you decided to switch majors and do this instead? Like did going home help in any way? Like this feels right. Like this is what I like, like this is it.
From a plant standpoint, I'm not sure. I think I think I was very much like you, like growing up in New York. It's just like, yes, this is grass, this is a flower, this is a tree. I know my mom, she grew a lot of plants in the house, and most of them were medicinal.
Yeah, mine too.
So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, your finger burn up. Here's some aloe.
Right.
It's just like everything is on the windowsill. You have a stomach ache, here, pick some of this.
Right.
Here's boil some Cerecy and move along. But I guess I've never thought about that connection. I'll say it that way. I don't think I've thought about that connection. I always knew that plants could do something because there was never a moment I could have I don't know, pink eye or a stomach ache, and my mom would have some concoction or put some leaf on my face and everything would be better. So I don't know if I've ever made that connection with other people knowing how, the use and the use of plants in Jamaica. I mean, I was just there for a lot of the eating. So it's like, oh, this is a mango tree. Oh, great. So now let's take 20 minutes and pick the best one.
Right.
And that was really most of my experience that way as well. Being introduced to the culture through food, through stories and things like that. So, so I guess I'd have to think about that because I'm not really too sure if that's a connection that I made for myself.
Okay. You getting married?
I am getting married. I'm engaged.
Yay.
How's
that going?
It's going great. I've been engaged for 2 months. I don't have a date yet, so when I know, everyone else will know. But he's amazing. He's from Detroit, so
moving to Detroit actually was like,
yeah, it worked out, right?
It worked out.
It's funny because when I moved here, I gave myself 5 years. I was like, okay, I'm going to try out a new city. I've never really lived anywhere else. Detroit is the one that seems to be calling me. I'm going to stay here for 5 years. And honestly, this will be the 5th year. And it looks like I'll be staying here for much longer. So, yeah. No, he's great. And you want to know something funny? He's a landscape architect too.
Oh, you got suckered. You married the same person in your field. You're one of those
married the
people.
Same profession. Yes, I'm one of those people. And it's going great.
How'd you guys meet?
We actually knew each other maybe a little bit honestly about a year before we actually started dating. But he's born and raised here in Detroit. He got his master's in landscape architecture from LSU and then moved back to Detroit maybe a couple years ago. And we just got kind of connected professionally. And then I was studying for my licensing exams, and I invited him to study with me. And we did, and it was kind of successful. Like it wasn't necessarily distracting, but we were just at 2 different points of preparing for the exams. Mm-hmm. I was further along than he was, so we ended up not studying together. And then a year went by, and then we reconnected again, and then
That was it.
And then we started dating this time last year. So we got engaged in less than a year.
Wow. But you guys knew
Yeah.
each other though for a long time.
We knew each other. I'm not gonna say like we were like always hanging out. We had the same friend circles and stuff like that. I would say out of a year, I probably would see him like 2 or 3 times in a social setting, but
Mm-hmm.
not on some like, hey, how are you? How's your parents? Nothing like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yes, it was a quick affair though. So,
Yay.
yeah, I'm so excited.
So it's like locations, right? Like that's the thing. It's definitely gonna be in Detroit, or you guys don't know yet.
I think we wanted to be here, but we also like we just every time we think about it, we're just like, yeah, we need like a full day to like of thought, just to because we have like there's so many things that we would be interested in doing, but we also don't want to start off anything on a financially negative note.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just about we just have to take the time to really think about it. But we are, I think, narrowing things down, and so we should be able to announce something soon. So that'll be great.
Well, we got married in DR.
Mm,
So are we
nice.
because the area we're in it's just ridiculously expensive, like the
Mm-hmm.
DC, Maryland area. We weren't going to go to Virginia. And since all of our families are Caribbean, we didn't want to. I mean, it didn't really matter in the end. Like, no, I take that back. So if we had it here, we would have had like 800 people.
Oh
And
wow.
um
Well then.
so the math didn't work out that way. So we were like, we're going to do a destination wedding. So I really wanted to have it in Tobago. It's Trinidad
Mm-hmm.
and Tobago. It's like one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was I got discouraged from working. There's a specific. I realized that I needed to concentrate more on planning, right?
Mm,
Because I'm dealing with there's this area called no man's land. You need a boat to
mm,
get there. And I just looked when we went there, I was like, I want my wedding here. It's so beautiful. It's like we could do like a big old like barbecue, and it's like between the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic. Like it's like those
mm-hmm.
two different waters. You like walk, oh, we know the Atlantic Sea, oh, I'm in the Caribbean Sea. I think that's how it goes. I know that one side of the water had a totally different temperature, totally different taste than the other side of the
Oh,
water.
interesting.
Um,
Interesting.
so it could be another sea or something. I don't know, but it was two different types of water. So anyway, I wanted to have it there, but it was too much planning. It was way too much,
Mm-hmm.
and to we would have to like do a villa, and it was just too much. It was too much. So I was just like, let me just go to a spot that's known for weddings, and it was great because it was cheaper, and it was I didn't have to do anything. Like I had fresh flowers. I had like all this stuff, all my anything. It was great. Like so, if you guys ever do decide to do a destination wedding, you can
Mm,
talk to me about it.
yeah.
But if you guys like stay in the D then or whatever, then I expect my invitation to be coming soon in the
All
mail.
right, girl. I'm gonna put that online. I'm gonna hit you with the DM.
Well, thank you so much.
Yes, this is great. I think you have established a really wonderful platform to have some real great, open, honest conversations on uh, for and by and with architects and designers. And I'm honestly very honored to be considered first. So, ow.
Yeah.
But I wish you all the best, and I think
thank
that
you.
you're on the verge of something really big. So if you need any other contacts, there's definitely people to watch.
Okay, yeah. We'll. I'll ask for that list.
All right, for sure, for sure.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, thank you. This has been great. This has been really great.
All right, enjoy your day.
Same to you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hey, listeners! I have an exciting announcement. I decided to launch a membership program for the show, where you have a chance to support me and the show directly. I love creating the show, and it means the world to me that you all tune in to keep hearing me week after week. But it takes an immense amount of time and energy to produce. I want to keep the show going, and I want to invest in its growth. And I also want you to become a partner with me in this journey. That's why I'm excited to give you a chance to officially become a supporter of the show at glow.fm/archispolly, ARCHISPOLLY, or by clicking the link in the show notes. It's quick and easy. It takes less than 30 seconds and just takes clicking a link in the show notes and using Apple or Google Pay. You don't have to create any new logins, and you can contribute as much or as little as you like. If this show is part of your day or week and you like what I'm doing, then visit glow.fm/archispolly, all one word, and support me and the show in any way you can today.